Well, hey everyone, this is AfterThoughts talking about the sermon today. Nick preached as we're in Advent. This is the second Sunday of Advent. Last Sunday we talked about hope, and this was more of a sermonette we did with the combination Thanksgiving meal,
Lord's Supper, yeah.
and all that. So we got more of the full sermon today with the concept of peace. Really, this was fun for me. I came up with new terms today, so.
Okay.
So I'm kind of excited about this, but we had an extended analogy of what it means to not have peace and how these things work when we live in disobedience. So I'm gonna go kind of a whole different direction with this because this is my afterthoughts. Like sometimes we go through the whole thing, but I want to hone in on something particular. It's not necessarily pushback, but I think maybe an augment.
Okay.
Is the way we can think about this. So. What I kind of was looking at and some of the things I wrote down, because I don't disagree with you. We talk about do what he says to do, that when we're not doing what Jesus tells us to do, we're going to end up having no peace. We're going to have guilt. We're going to have shame. Usually those things follow. But one of the things, and by context, we had talked about in when we were doing our podcast and everything, there's levels in which we grow in virtue where the person who is vicious, and this is where I was kind of going through thinking this, I realized viciousness corresponds what the Bible will refer to as like a complete state of sinfulness or what's degeneration, carnality. Okay. This is where you know it's bad, you love it, you do it anyway. Okay. So for somebody like that, it's funny because I was thinking, somebody like that, at least temporarily, they don't struggle with the issue of peace because they're sort of sold out. But eventually, that's going to come back. Jesus is coming back. Eventually, there's going to be a.
Well, I don't know where you're going with this because we don't talk about this beforehand. But I would push back on that and say that I know a lot of men that live that lifestyle, and there is no peace.
Like, well, it would be a false sense of peace, or like maybe the distractions that are involved. Like when you're living in debauchery, you're constantly distracting yourself.
It's a constant.
Yeah,
fleeing, numbing,
right?
But none of them, every one of them that I know, is looking over their shoulder for something.
Right, because you know you're doing the wrong things. There's always that element
eventually, yeah.
Right, so that's not what the main thing I wanted to go.
Okay,
but that's where starting with it, and then as we talk about virtue, we have inconsistent and consistent behavior. So the inconsistent person is the one who knows it's wrong, but they're still doing it anyway. Mm-hmm. Okay, so. Almost, I think this in some ways applies with the illustration where a lot of people are, where they're living in disobedience, they know they shouldn't be, and that's why there's that immense guilt and shame and the looking over the shoulder, hiding things and all that goes on. But this inconsistent and the consistent is the person who knows it's good, who does what they're supposed to, but they struggle to make it happen.
Okay.
So the new terminology, when I got to thinking about this, is this idea of hypocrisy. Because the hypocrisy is where you believe one thing, you do another. But then I realized there's almost two levels to this, because the inconsistent person who knows what they should be doing but is not doing it could be considered like this unrighteous hypocrisy, almost like the person who, this is I think in some ways where the Pharisees would be, like they're calling themselves righteous but they're doing bad things. Okay. And the consistent person, and where I was going with this, I think one of the problems we face in the church is a righteous hypocrisy, where you know the right thing and you're doing the right thing, but you don't want to do that right thing.
I think that would be the Pharisees.
No,
many times.
I think, well, and particularly with believers, I'm thinking, and because you used me as an example, you talk about, my issue with loving my enemy.
Well, you just used it the other day.
Well, right. Yeah. I mean, I use it frequently because that's what I would consider the righteous hypocrisy from this side, because this is why, for me, so again, using myself, loving my enemies, I know I'm supposed to. I know this is what Jesus says, and I can't really think in my own life where I don't do that, where I lash out at enemies, where I seek vengeance, those kinds of things. Like I'm not doing those bad things. And even when I have somebody who I don't like, who causes me these problems, I still try to show compassion. I still try to do these things. But the question is, do I have that love inside?
Well, it doesn't sound like you're loving them. It sounds like you're not hating them.
Right, but that's where I'm living in obedience in terms of the external. But I think this is why I don't disagree with anything that you've said. I think one of the connections I was making, and I've struggled with this as a pastor for many years, the number of people who do what they're supposed to do, who can live in that obedience, but the internal is not following.
But still not be known by Christ.
Well,
it's like I prophesied in your name. I did all the things. And he says, yet I still do not know you. Is that kind of what you're...
That's one group, but I'm thinking those who genuinely love Jesus,
okay,
who know Jesus. Mm-hmm. But again, this is going back to our internal desires, what we deem is really good, and what our hearts long for, and what we're so.
Well, this is Paul in Romans.
Mm-hmm.
I keep doing what I don't want to do. I mean, is what you're kind of laying out. Like, it's the battle of the flesh,
right? And so that's why in living with peace, there is a sense, if we're not acting according to what Christ says, we're not going to have peace. But there's another element that if we don't love what Christ loves, if we don't properly order what's internal as mm-hmm. well, we're also not going to have peace, because we can still, that's why we can still live in that obedience, but not have that inner peace because our hearts want something else.
So it's that super pastoral cliche of the 18 inches. Like, you got it here, you just got to get it there, right? You got to move it that. So it's got to be. It's always a heart issue, is what I think you're kind of surfacing. Is
right.
It's not about just doing for doing. It's doing because you want to seek the true, the good, and the beautiful.
Right.
And be obedient to Him.
Right, and that's why when I'm thinking in terms of language of virtue, we talk about properly ordering our loves. Mm-hmm. That's why we use that language, because as a youth pastor, so let's go this route. As a youth pastor, the number of teenagers who lived the way that they were expected to, mm-hmm. but so there's a sense they would always follow the rules, mm-hmm. but their hearts wanted something else.
Sure.
And that's why so many teenagers, when they go to college and know those rules no longer apply, all of a sudden they go crazy. Now, it's not everybody, but there is this element where if your heart is really wanting that, and then the rule givers are taken away, then you see a change in behavior.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay. So this is why, and this is what I struggled with as a youth pastor for so long, was why does this keep happening? Why do we keep seeing this with all of these different teenagers who clearly know and who are living in this obedience, but then as soon as the authority is taken away, they don't continue? And that was one of the things that led me to realize it goes back to that internal ordering of loves. They mm-hmm. never really wanted it to begin with, or they knew how to play the game and keep the peace and live amongst the rules. And this is why, just in thinking about this sermon, I think this is what I try to communicate with people, is that if our hearts and our desires are in line with Christ and we're living in obedience, that's where you have this internal, external are aligned. And that is the place all believers should want to be. And what I caution against, and what kind of made me think of it, is the number of times our externals might be in line, but our internals are disordered.
Well, I think that goes, and I didn't spend time on it, but I see what you're saying. I think that kind of goes with the beginning of it, though. If you love me, you will keep my word.
Right.
And his word is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength.
Right.
And to love your neighbor as yourself. Like, if you love me, you will keep these things. I think I probably focused more on the things we do.
Right.
Versus, kind of diving in a little bit more onto what that proper order of love looks like.
Right.
But I think it's captured in the verse. It's just, I did not do an appropriate job of communicating that part.
Well, no.
Well.
Like I said, I'm not disagreeing with anything that you said. It's just, again, these are my afterthoughts. These are my thoughts. This is where my mind went.
Well, do you know how many times prior to us doing this on camera, you gave me your afterthoughts of every sermon I preached for the first 2 years,
yes.
Right? Like, I asked for that feedback.
Yes.
But I don't take it as a, poor me. No, I genuinely think you're right. I think the idea of, a little bit more on what that proper order of love looks like. I think that would have served a little better in the sermon.
Well, and I think and that's why I want to kind of bring it out now, is just from this place of,
sure, yeah.
oh, what was it? Um, because when you mention the verse and we talk about love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, I think what I've seen in my years of pastoring is a number of people who love Jesus, but have almost forgotten, or sometimes it falls off the radar. And I think this is why I'm bringing it up now. I don't think we talk about it enough. You can truly love Jesus, but your heart is divided and you're also loving these other things, which is why we struggle. Maybe we succeed in following Christ, but this is where we become, you know, we have this what I'm deeming now almost like the righteous hypocrisy. We're wanting something else. Our actions don't line up with our heart, like the total picture.
I mean, I think Paul struggled with this, right? I mean, I think this is not, I think this is a tale as old as time. I think
Yeah, it is. I mean, this is what it means to be human.
Right.
But to bring this out explicitly, this is what I think when I was a pastor and when I was preaching these things, I never really brought this out.
Yeah.
And so that's why now with AfterThoughts, we have a chance to sort of bring this
Put
out.
it out there, yeah.
Because I think that is some of the struggle where people have almost like, I love my wife, but I also love these other things, and now there's competition. I love my kids, but now I love this other thing. There's competition. And so that's why the journey of virtue and the language of virtue for me has been, oh, wait, I need to, when I talk about loving the Lord, he needs to be the ultimate, which means bringing all of these other desires, all of these other things. And if there's something in competition, it has to be killed.
Right. Okay.
And so Jesus doesn't use these words, but this is what he gets at when he says, if you don't hate your mother, your father, your spouse, even your own life, you're not worthy of me. So again, all these ideas are covered, but I think this is why we have the sermons, is to really put feet to what these look like.
Right.
And so that's why just as you were talking, I was thinking, and I was even drawing pictures, the fact we have, there's Jesus's expectations, but my problem is my passions will go woo off to the side.
Right.
And so that's why almost this phrase, when you said, do what he says to do, my thought that comes after this is, but if we don't believe the goal of our actions is the greatest good, we're not going to do it. Because there's some element sometimes, and again, this isn't like across the board, but I think for many believers, there are those who struggle. They're doing what he says do, but do we really believe that is the greatest good? Like he says things like, love your enemies. And I know I struggle with my passions, but there's part of me, I realize this is what it truly means to live the good life.
So do you think we struggle as Christians to do that because we don't have that? Whether I haven't bought into the mission, the Great Commission, the mission of what we're supposed to do, or the purpose that he's placed on our lives and what that means to live for him. Do you think that's like, we're ill-equipped, or pastors, we have not equipped the church to understand that?
Could be that, and I think it's also the reasons why people's hearts could be drawn away is so multifaceted that a single sermon doesn't necessarily capture it, which is why we need the mentoring, which is why we need the relationship. Because for some people, it could be a pride issue, which is going to be different from somebody if it's a self-control issue. Yeah. It could be different for somebody who has pain and fear because they've been hurt before. And so that's why the language of the virtue and vices, and like with what you guys are doing in Sunday school, the power behind that is now we have kind of all the specific pegs of where things can go wrong and how to align when we talk about love the Lord with your heart, here's all the facets of the heart. Here's all the different kind of ways we can go. So I think that's why there is a simple solution. There is the follow Christ. Okay. That's the simple solution. It's the simple solution.
Super simple.
But the things that cause us not to follow Christ, there could be a variety of things there, and it's not always a one size fits all. And even when I think about like my teenagers when I was a youth pastor, and I did the calculations on the other day, I think I came up with like 240 like actual names of kids that were a significant part of the youth ministry. There's others who came in and out,
right?
But when I really name, about 240. And so thinking back on all of those teenagers, and I think what I struggle with and why I do what I do now, so few of them remain in the faith out of that number. And I look at it and I look back at when I had them as a teenager, and I can realize they had so many, their hearts were so divided. And I didn't realize it back then. And I think this is why encouraging the church, part of this, you want to know peace, it is, we have to abide in his commands. You want to truly know the truth. You want to really be in Christ. You're going to abide in his word. But I think for every believer, there needs to be the introspection. What is the thing or things that are causing you, that's pulling you away? What is it that your heart is
So like you
possibly
said,
seeking?
there might not be a one size fits all, but I think the one kind of what that would boil down to is living with an intentionality to pursue him. And, that may not be the same thing across the board,
Right.
but living with intentionality is much different than living every day as just like whatever the day throws at you and just putting out fires all day.
Right.
And so I think that it may not be one size, but there is at least a common starting point.
Yep. So, Nick, thank you for the sermon. Like I said, I wrote down all kinds of other things in relation to this. Like I said, had a lot of fun because it sparks this concept. The whole idea of living with peace is the idea of, I'm also gearing up, to be honest, I've been reading a lot on Christian ethics recently because I'm teaching ethics in spring.
Coming up.
But the whole point is to live a good life.
Right.
What is the good life? And you can't really have a good life without peace. And so that's why living apart from Christ, living in disobedience, you're not going to know peace. You're not going to know a good life, the true life that he has in store. I have came that they would have life and have it more abundantly. And you're not going to find that apart from Christ.
Well, I preached Jesus' words today, right? Like he's like, this is, I'm going to give you peace.
Yes.
Like no other. But he preceded it with, like, there's an expectation. And I think many of us, when we come into the faith, we're told other things.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's hard to live with that intentionality unless somebody kind of breaks it down and says, this is what, there are expectations here.
Yep.
You need to live a certain kind of way.
Yep. So Nick, again, thank you. Appreciate it. Looking forward to next week, which is, because the sermon is on, the last one's on hope. Or the last one's on love. Joy. Yes. So joy next week.
Joy next week. And then
joy
love,
next week.
And
then love right before
Christ,
Christmas.
Yeah.
And then we're on. So thank you, Nick. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
We'll see y'all next time.